Since revelations late last year that Australia had monitored the phones of the Indonesian president and his wife, relations between the two countries have been in the deep freeze. Tomorrow, Prime Minister Abbott will leave Australia for his first face-to-face meeting with the Indonesian president since then. The PM's overseas trip will end in the United States, where the US president has just announced new rules for coal-fired power stations to cut their emissions. Political correspondent Sabra Lane reports.
America. Everyone knows it's the greatest nation on earth, and our leaders are the greatest leaders on earth.
Tony Abbott's not due in the United States until next week, but an American TV audience gained a glimpse of the PM's backstory this week, courtesy of a new satirical show.
This week's leader, Tony Abbott, Prime Minister of Australia.
The program edited together a series of gaffes.
Its current leader, hardline right-wing Prime Minister Tony Abbott, who rose to power promising to be pro-business and religiously anti-immigration.
It is not necessarily everyone's place to come to Australia.
Exactly. Australia is for real Australians, like Tony Abbott, who was born in London, England.
The Prime Minister leaves for France tomorrow, where he probably won't be subjected to such satire. He's bound for Normandy and ceremonies marking the D-Day 70th anniversary. But he'll have a surprise whistle-stop meeting on the way with President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, the first such encounter between the two men since the Australia-Indonesia relationship was put on ice last year.
It's a very significant move because this is probably the meeting that will pave the way for the restoration of normal relations.
The two leaders spoke on the phone last month. Unknown to Mr Abbott, several Indonesian journalists were in the room with SBY. One recorded the chat. The president said if we can meet before August, then we can complete everything. We can strengthen and step up our relationship. Mr Abbott responded by saying, "I will prove that there is a new relationship between Indonesia and Australia as fast as possible."
This would seem to be an astonishing breach of diplomatic protocol to have two leaders of two nations talking to each other, with one of the interlocutors seemingly not knowing that the conversation is being recorded, and also being recorded by a journalist.
A spokesman for the Indonesian government later described the undisclosed journalists being present as a mistake. Jakarta broke off relations with Canberra last year following revelations that Australia spied on the president by attempting to monitor phone conversations between him, his wife and close associates in 2009. Indonesia was also furious over the boat turnback policy. A scheduled meeting between the two leaders was cancelled last month due to an asylum boat turnback, though budget preparations were cited as the official reason. With SBY's tenure about to end, a new president could pose complications for Australia.
We also need to factor in the possibility that the person who is elected as president in Indonesia in next month is Prabowo Subianto. He has run a very strongly nationalist line, almost a xenophobic line. He could well respond very badly if Australia turned back boats.
Following the spying scandal, Indonesia stipulated relations would resume when Australia signed a new code of conduct. That won't happen on this trip.
I am confident that when the Foreign Minister and the Defence Minister sit down for the 2+2 dialogue in a few weeks' time, that would be a very good time to finalise this code of conduct.
Part of Mr Abbott's journey includes Canada and the US, where President Obama has revealed new rules for coal-fired power stations. They'll be forced to cut emissions by 30% by 2030.
The President is principally into direct action.
Robert Hill was Environment Minister in the Howard era. He's now a Director of Alliance 21, a program analysing US-Australia relations.
I think it shows a level of commitment. In the power industry, 20% by 2020 and 30% reduction by 2030 is very ambitious.
Australia's target is to cut emissions by 5% by 2020.
We have a more carbon-intense economy, and a -5% by 2020 sounds less than -20%, but in terms of the equivalent cost, it may not be so different.
An issue the two leaders might discuss next week.